Hi there, welcome to the Business Purpose Trends podcast. I'm Phil Preston. This is your weekly update and reminder. There's a Business Purpose podcast channel on YouTube too, if that works for you better. And I've also just released an article and a video called Developing Resilience and Growth for Leaders and Teams in 2024, where purpose is the core driver of resilience and growth, spoiler alert. And it also applies to organizations as well, but I'm targeting leaders and teams in that particular article. There's a link in the show notes to that. And today's episode is prompted by a new article, a study that's got data linking corporate purpose to performance. Before that, listening to some feedback, Louise asked, how do we differentiate more token forms of corporate purpose from purpose that is truly transformational and socially significant? So I'm going to circle back to that. Thank you for that question or interest area, Louise. Before I discuss this latest study, though, the authors previously caught my eye in a paper called Put Purpose at the Core of Your Strategy, also from the Harvard Business Review. Now, two of the three authors involved in that paper a few years back are involved in this one as well. And I've drawn on that paper a lot because they looked at 28 companies, and those companies were ones that had compound average growth rates of 30% year on year for 5 years running. And some of those were in declining industries. And what they found in that study was there was a fourth factor they weren't quite expecting that was common amongst all those companies. And that was they put purpose in the core of their business. Now, this was correlation or causation, but it was interesting nonetheless. So these authors have good form in this area. But it raises the question, what are they really talking about with respect to purpose in the core of business? And what is the model that they're referring to? How does it differ from others? So the current paper, or the new one published in the HBR, was How Your Company's Social Purpose Can Also Drive Profits. And it's by Thomas Malnight and Ivy Bush. That's B-U-C-H-E. And it's examining the tensions between solving higher order problems and being competitive or achieving growth in the business at the same time. My first observation in this area is that companies really do exist to solve problems. And if they aren't solving a genuine problem, then their existence is in jeopardy. And they're not necessarily going to earn returns from solving problems that don't need solving. So I contend that purpose and profit go hand in hand anyway. And my book, Connecting Profit with Purpose, outlines a whole lot of case studies and examples in that area. But I think timeframes is one of the main issues here. So when we're dealing with positive social, economic, and environmental outcomes, it takes time. And when we have listed companies whose shareholders are less patient, then companies might be tempted to give in rather than develop the really smart, sophisticated strategies and messaging that go with them. Or maybe they haven't developed a longer-term investor base that's going to stick with them and see these strategies through. Being a private company probably has some advantages there, although you can't raise capital so easily. Now, the current paper reports on a study of 12 companies reorienting their business for multi-stakeholder impact while seeking high financial growth. Sounds a little bit jargony already, but bear with us. So those that succeeded had adopted what they call an advocacy-based business model. So I'll say it again, advocacy-based business model, which means they're focusing on targeted stakeholders, and the company's leveraging its resources and abilities to address key social, economic, and environmental issues that are challenging those stakeholders in a way that's also in alignment with the company's own purpose. What they found is that the advocacy-based business model is underpinned by 4 elements, and that is 1, taking a stance on an issue, 2, extrapolation, 3, strong leaders who accept vulnerability, and 4, an enabling culture. I'll quickly run through then. So number 1, taking a stance on an issue. They look at the shipping company AP Moller Maersk, who've realized it was contributing a lot to global emissions. They announced they'd decarbonize, but then they upped their targets. They are aiming to renew their fleet to get to 100% green fuels. And that was actually sending a signal to the ecosystem of suppliers around them who were interested in raising their own, production or innovation to meet that future goal. They're finding that category, their eco-delivery option, has grown 170% in the last 3 years because customers like Nike, H&M, Disney, Novo Nordisk, and others are wanting a green delivery option. So this is linked to competitive advantage in my mind. This is not just doing good for the sake of it. And I think it's likely that the numbers are going to stack up well if this is a well-executed strategy. So taking a stance, this first factor, I think means there's a forecast win-win in the issue for the company and the stakeholders present. The other example they gave, I wasn't so convinced about, so you can look at that if you want. It was about part of the Mars pet care business. The second factor was extrapolation, and really saying you don't need to build new processes to do purpose transformation. Sometimes you're just extrapolating from existing initiatives. So in Maersk's case, how do you say that? I don't know, Maersk, they moved their timing of the net zero goals forward. And it relates also to a point that I often make, that purpose transformation is not reinventing things. It's often about enhancing processes. So think about your strategy process or your policy process or your innovation process. You can overlay some purpose parameters or new questions or other features on top of what you've already got. Point 3, strong leaders who accept vulnerability. So this is committing to outcomes when the course of action is unknown. This is a key part of it, really, isn't it? Because there's an element of risk. You don't know if you can hit those goals, but you want to motivate people to, I guess, stretch and do their best to get there. So this is a corporate play that is used quite often. And I think knowing that the stretch goal is reasonable and that people are going to be motivated to hitting it is a big part of that. And point 4 probably relates to that, having an enabling culture. So all these elements have to connect. And I think purpose transformation is really going beyond the company's walls and beyond the supply chain that they're in. It's going out into a bigger ecosystem. And so cultures have to be able to adapt not just to internal change, but also dealing with new external partners and stakeholders. An advocacy-based business model helps companies think in a consistent long-term way and what's really at stake for them and their shareholders. And when they do it, they're enhancing trust and commitment. And this is going to help, especially in tough times for companies. It improves the resilience of a company, and it's unlocking impact in line with the purpose and driving that sustainable financial growth. So overall, what does it mean for us? An advocacy-based business model. I don't think that name is going to catch on and inspire anyone in a hurry. I think the other name for this is common sense, but that's unlikely to catch on too. It seems like the world's a bit short of that right now. But it comes back to the issue Louise identified. Is corporate purpose and purpose transformation well enough understood? And this is just my view, purely my view. Corporate purpose as a statement alone is useless. It's prone to purpose washing, greenwashing, and I think I've referred to data before where 52% of CEOs say they saw purpose as a talent branding tool only, which is far different from corporate purpose as a genuine desire to deliver net positive societal outcomes, and where purpose transformation is the process to get there. And that's all about driving performance and competitive advantage and profitability in line with delivering strong social, environmental, and economic impacts. So one of the key issues around this is payback periods, because some material issues that create the win-wins we're looking for will be realized in short time periods, some medium and some longer term. So that's another part of the challenge. But stepping back from this a little bit further again, with so many big challenges we're facing on the planet right now, we need to point our resources in the right direction and take on our biggest problems in the most capital efficient and effective way. Now, in developed economies, the private sector typically accounts for 75% of economic activity. So that's where the majority of the resources lie. Therefore, purpose-driven business models that are genuinely looking for transformation is going to help us head towards some of these greater positive impacts. Further reading will be in the show notes. I'll put those 2 HBR articles, the links to them in the show notes, and a link to my book that has the examples of innovating with the purpose lens. Many prior episodes have also touched on aspects of this discussion. So episodes 1, 2, 6, 11, and 15, which sounds a little bit like a lotto draw, you can look them up. And in my Purpose Edge series, that's my other podcast, Ramana James, the episode, which I think was 2 or 3 episodes back, is that's a masterclass in purpose transformation, in my humble opinion. You'll also find that the Purpose Edge on Apple, Spotify, and it has its own website as well. Now, remember, there's a link to developing resilience and growth for leaders and teams in 2024 in the notes too, which is breaking the resilience and growth challenge down into 3 dimensions or components that are purpose-based. So enjoy that. And that's this week's update. You'll find my contact details in the show notes. And thanks so much for tuning in. Have a great day, and may the business purpose trend be with you.